my clever dad joke name for this Spectrum Pulse is called CIG Money Printer Go Brrrr.
That's great. I also want to show you. I fixed it for you.
Fix what?
The website.
The website. What website?
The financials website. Look at Discord.
Did you put it in our chat or where'd you put it?
Yeah, look at our call.
How did you do that?
Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
So I actually have an extension from Dark Reader.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Just fixes it.
Oh man, yeah. The brightness is just so hard. Like you can see it shining off my face.
It's rough. Even reading on my phone, it was rough.
Inner Hype, thank you so much for the follow. Thanks for joining us this evening. Hope you're doing well. Appreciate the support.
So right. Even looking at the stupid Twitch stream, it's rough.
Naz, since you always do the sort of preamble for the monthly reports, you want to do the forward and we'll just alternate from there?
That's a long forward, but yes. Cloud Imperium. Oh, I almost said games. Cloud Imperium financials for 2022. So, bit of kind of disclaimer. The financials come out a year in lag. So this is not the end of, this is not 2023. This is not the stuff they did in 2023. This is for the year before. It takes them a year after closing the financial year to process all of their accounting stuff and then to publish this. So this is all the stuff they did and ramped up for 2022. 2023 is going to look insane compared to this, as this looks compared to 2021. So, forward. In keeping with previous years, in our exclusive and open policy of information, our policy of informing our community of how we are spending the hard-earned money they commit to the games and universe we are building. I update our accounting for 2020. The 2022 year for consistency is the same format as prior years and follows the same simple cost accounting rules without prescribing formats. Disclosures and other treatments required for our financial statements. That's a period. So as usual, no revenue. The words here are just escaping my head. No revenue recognition adjustments, intellectual property off. God darn it. Words. Sorry. Amortizing? Sure.
Amortization.
Software capitalization. What was that?
Amortization.
Amortization? I don't know what that means yet. Software capitalization or other accounting alterations that would depart from the more simple and understandable cost entries that this update aims to deliver. AKA, this is a layman's view of the financials.
And
this is not for
this is a layman's
accountants.
Version of the financials because they do have to publish their entire financial report in detail to the government of the United Kingdom. They are required to do so. They give a lot of oversight because CIG gets public funding from the UK for operating there and having their big studio and hiring all those people. So continue.
Apparently it's an accounting thing, that word.
Yeah.
I still don't know what it is yet, but it's an accounting thing. The accounting published here remains simple and understandable, showing income net of sales tax as invoiced or accrued and costs as incurred. We add this to capital expenditures as spent. As usual, we aim to give more relevant details regarding how the income and costs are clarified or classified compared to what we would be required to do in publishing financial statements. The basis of this analysis remains the management account numbers that underpin the financial statements we provide to our auditors, upon which they perform their work for the annual audit. So, continuing to explain how this is a bit simpler, not what they're giving to their auditors, the government, and their internal. There's a word for people who do money stuff.
Accountants.
Accountants.
Overall.
Yes.
So the 2022 accounting shows that Cloud Imperium grew again with total income up 30% on last year's. So here we are, income, and they even include a picture. So total income for 2022 was $130 million. And so a lot of people will have mentioned that what? No, I thought they made like made like 113 million. You can see it on the website. That's not their only source of income. What we see on the website is just the sales pledges counter. We don't see the subs counter that goes in there, and they also have other incomes. So in here it says incentives, partnerships, and other. That other also includes, they get, most years they do get some money from the UK government as a subsidy for the capital expenditures and the hiring and the growth that they're doing in the UK. So the UK encourages them to expand there. That's why they chose to do this. Here, I'll put the chat. This is all hosted, and you can look at this one and all the years before that and a number of other articles on the CIG website, not RSI, CIG. So this is their corporate website versus the Roberts Space Industries Star Citizen website. Yeah, super confusing. Yeah, Dark Reader is your friend.
Yeah,
I don't have it on.
He'll have it for next year.
Yes, next time. Stay tuned for next year. But you can see that they made an additional $16.5 million outside of sales and pledges, essentially ship sales. But you can also see that the difference in ship sales was the biggest change. So in 2022, their other income was $11,377,000, whereas the year before that, it was about $2 million less. And same with subscriptions. That only went up by about $250,000. But ship sales, pledges, yeah, or it's $250,000. But when your entire revenues are in the hundred, this much, it's the biggest growth point was pledges, sales of ships and such. And that went up by essentially, let's see, $28 million in 1 year. Which is nuts, because otherwise, they were probably expecting a growth a lot less than that. They had growth from 2020 over to 2021. They're probably expecting similar growth over that, but not this much. That was unprecedented. They did not plan for that. So with total income up 30% on last year's record-breaking annual performance. So again, 2021 was a record-breaking year. 2020 was a record-breaking year. They've had continued growth almost every year except for 2017. And even then, that was only a slight decline. But it's gotten
that was also
pretty substantial.
The year after they said Squadron was going to be out in 2016. So,
yeah. Xeric 2023s will come out December of 2024. It's a year in arrears.
You mean January?
But we do know, well, they usually put out in December, but yeah, January, December.
Oh, okay.
So the regular and improving game deliveries with increased playability and stability was a key part to our success in 2022. But unlike 2021, the performance was more consistent throughout the year. 2021, what they're saying is that they had more consistent sales growth across the year versus just in IAE and Invictus launch week. And so that's represented partly because we do see a lot more sales going on with different in-game events and such spread out throughout the year instead of as much. It's not as focused in those two events. Let's see. throughout the year. Also, departing from prior years leading up to 2022, the U.S. growth in income was higher than that of the rest of the world. It is difficult to draw direct conclusions. They're just talking about where the money came from. The U.S. Versus monies coming from Europe and Australia and such. It is difficult to draw direct conclusions for this shift, but the instability caused by the Russian-Ukraine conflict and the generally slower rebound of the European economy in 2022 compared to the U.S. seems likely to be a factor. Costs, including capital expenditures, also increased by 29%. So they made more money, but they also spent more money. And people are like, oh, well, why are they doing that? Because they're doing that because if they are sitting on money, they pay more in taxes on it. And so you have to spend money to make money. And so they're trying to keep their incomes and expenses pretty close together so they're not adding to this pile and having to pay more taxes on it and not utilizing that money to grow the studio. If they continue to hire more people and they make bigger offices to get towards their goal, then that's a good thing of ultimately reaching that goal versus just losing that money to taxes.
Yeah, a simple way to think of it, like if you make $100, the government says, "Oh, 50% of that's mine because you made it here." But if you were to say, "Hold on, this is for my business," and go, buy a new car or whatever, not $100, but you get it. Then you say, "Well, I bought this car," and the government goes, "Ah, never mind, that's yours."
Yeah,
and they won't tax it. They'll because they also get the sales tax on things you buy.
Yeah,
so
and
they stay out of your revenue. So that's why companies always try to make sure they spend nearly, if not exactly, as much as they make.
Yeah. The only time that they're doing that is if they're trying to save funds for a larger expenditure that's planned in the future. Well, and CIG has been spending money hand over fist in order to build the new studios, to hire more people, to upgrade their equipment and stuff. Capital has value. Operating expenditures do not. Danger Hobo, they're just saying that the Russian-Ukraine conflict influenced the European economy, and that could be why there was greater growth and more spending that came out of the U.S. and into CIG's pocket than the amount of growth from other parts of the world, particularly Europe. That's all they're saying. It's not a load of shit. Big events like the Ukraine conflict have far-reaching effects on the economies of neighboring countries. That's just a thing. It's the way it goes.
Was it baseline or end line? I can't words today. End of the story is war's bad.
Yeah, war is bad for for neighboring economies and for discretionary spending like buying internet spaceships. And so they're just saying that there was more growth in spending on Star Citizen by backers in the U.S. than there was in other countries. There's still growth,
literally
just
the
not
rest
as much.
of the world.
Yeah. So let's see. Costs, including capital expenditures, also increased by 29%, although excluding capital expenditures, principally focused upon the new rest of world offices. So they're talking about the new office and all the hiring in Manchester and also in Frankfurt. Frankfurt got a new office as well at about the same time. Larger office, a nicer office. It's not anywhere close to as big as Manchester, but it's still a really nice campus.
So I really want to see a tour of it because I just remembered the building they're in. They're in a completely new building that is like the most modern tech building that Germany has.
Yeah,
it's
a giant
building.
tech campus. Yep.
Yeah, basically, it's a mixed use building. There are offices, there are homes. There's a restaurant at the base, and I think there's also a restaurant somewhere in the tower.
Yep.
And it's like all kitted out, basically like Facebook campus is. It looks great on paper. I want to see it as it's completed.
Danger, well, that has nothing. That's a completely irrelevant comment. Like, I don't know why you're ragging on about this, but the reason people in Europe spent less money on Star Citizen is because there's less certainty in their economy. That's the thing. It just, you could say that about a lot of things and why other, the different countries and their economies lagged in Europe because there was uncertainty about where that conflict was going to go. That's all that it's saying. I don't know why you're getting fixated on the Ukraine conflict, but they're just saying that Americans spent more on Star Citizen than Europeans because Americans weren't worried about the Ukraine conflict and it didn't affect our economy. That's all it is. Yeah, at the end of the day, they're still raking it in. And this is 2022, and they made more money in 2023, which is nuts.
A lot more money.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a big jump like this, but they did eclipse this. So nearly all categories were up on the previous year,
They also bought
but
turbine,
overheads. Yeah. But we're going to talk about that.
But we'll get to why that doesn't really matter later.
It doesn't. Nearly all cost categories were up on the previous year, but overheads, external game development, and publishing operations, including customer servicing costs, were the main drivers for this increase in costs. Salaries and related costs for game development and support remained the highest spend category, accounting for almost half of the total operational spend in 2022, and almost 60% when factoring in the growth in external game development costs managed mainly through the U.S. Yeah, Salty Dog, yeah, exactly, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But this is a really good chart. That's why I used it in the thumbnail. This it just shows from the beginning back here. This is how much money CIG has made every year. How much income, not net revenues, income.
How did they get that many people in 2012? Because they only had 4 months in 2012. How many is that? Hold on. That's so much.
The original Kickstarter was several million, 30. But then they continued.
Yeah, but that's not in subscriptions. 35,000 divided by, let's go to the moderate 20. That's still 1,750 people subscribed at $20.
It's pretty impressive.
That within 4 months of the website being live. What? That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Roberts, you madman.
Do you want to read the summary?
Reading summary.
We'll just alternate with each bolded paragraph.
It's a subtitle, yeah. 2022 continued the trend of record-breaking growth, with revenue up 32% to $114 million. This was fueled by a growth in player numbers and increased player time arising from regular content delivery early in the year and improving game stability throughout the full year. Remember, this is 2022, not 2023. This sentence will not be in next year's report. Subscriptions were up 6% to 5.3 million, and other income increased 21% to 11.4 million, driven in part by the growth in the UK development and associated credit arising thereof. To recap, the top 3 lines describe our revenue sources.
So like I talked about, the other income increased 21% to 11.4 million, driven in part by the growth in the UK. So them spending money to build that giant studio in the UK and hire all those people. The more money they spend over there, the more of a subsidy, the credit that they receive from the UK government in return. So it essentially, if they spend $6 million on capital expenditures and hiring more people, they get $2 million of that back, essentially. And I'm just throwing numbers out there, but it essentially the UK gives them a credit, and it goes into their income slot to help offset some of the cost of them spending money in the UK. It's a net gain for the UK, but it also really helps decide where the CIG spends their money.
The UK is trying to make more tech and game companies be in the UK. So hey, we're just going to give you giant bonuses to make your office here. And CIG's we'll take that money because the US has way too many game studios. They're not giving out these handouts.
Yep.
So
and they've got
more power over there. They get kickbacks. It's great for everyone. except the
They have
US.
good game dev and digital art programs in their universities, and so they're trying to get as many jobs for these people as they can.
Yep. Good all around.
Black Intellect says they probably get some EU subsidies as well because of the Germany office. They could. I don't know. I've never heard it mentioned, but it could very well be a thing. The Germany office is a lot smaller, though. It's
Made
a really
up of
nice
almost
office.
completely Crytek devs.
Yeah, Crytek devs they stole. Yoink.
Crytek and a couple of TT devs, I believe, from Aaron coming over. Gonna do pledges and sales?
Yep. Sorry, I'm just reading chat.
Yep. No worries.
Danger Hobo. It is difficult to draw direct conclusions for this shift, but the instability caused by the Russian-Ukraine conflict and the generally slower rebound of the European economy in 2022 compared to the US seems likely to be a factor. If you don't want to focus on it, stop bringing it up. You know,
I don't want.
just saying. This is just a logical thing.
I don't want to focus on it, but like you're focusing on it. Like you're the one who keeps bringing it.
Yeah.
If you don't want to focus on it, don't focus on it.
So
Fine.
pledges,
It's okay.
and so here they're going to have a couple little paragraphs breaking down what they count as income. You know what those things are. Pledges, sales from the counter, the counter that we see on the website. This line is taken directly from our daily published funding stats counter. They even have a link showing the net receipts from our backers and customers. The vast majority of revenues are of, and this is important, the vast majority of revenues are of starter pack pledges granting access to the Star Citizen Alpha game, as well as spaceships and digital items immediately delivered and playable in the game. So that's where the vast majority of their pledges come from. And they mention it this way because what they have said in 2022, and they mentioned it in, I think it was both letters from the chairman, is that the number of new players in 2022, the rate of new players coming in and backing the game skyrocketed in 2022. What they call it the conversion rate. So people who created an account and then subsequently pledged for the game, subsequently backed, versus just people who just created an account, because there are getting close to 5 million accounts, but the number of actual pledged accounts, people that have bought into the game, is only like 2 million and some change. A significantly smaller fraction of revenues came from pledges for concept ships, which all come with an included loaner for immediate use and playability within the Star Citizen Alpha. So the majority of the money is coming from starter packs, and as well as ships that are readily available in game. That's why we have seen such a big shift away from concepts to straight to flyyables, because straight to flyable ships sell a lot better compared to concepts. Due to exchange differences and small items that are not included in the counter, such as shipping costs charged on physical goods, this counter does not completely represent all revenue, but it's the overwhelming majority of it. Other than subscriptions referred below, these differences are included in the final income line to give an accurate representation of the total revenue received. If you want to read the next two, I'll do the following.
Got it. Okay. Subscriptions. The subscription line is the value of our subscriptions using standard exchange rates. Any differences due to exchange rate movement have been accounted for in the final income line. Other income. The other income line represents partnership incomes with various hardware and software vendors, sponsorship income, and various local incentives based on the nature and location of our development and production activities. It also includes any exchange differences as referred to above. Then the big list.
All right, so this is a number chart, and I think, is there a picture? Let's see. Oh, they don't have a... Okay. Yeah, so this image right here is referencing this chart up here. If we open this in a new tab, you can see it bigger, but this is basically breaks down year over year all the monies that they spent and what categories they are. It also breaks down where they were spent in the U.S. versus rest of the world, what have you.
I wonder if they're
And
going to split this up to NAEU next year.
Yeah, because I think when they say U.S., I think they mean like North America, because this is definitely turbulent right here.
Right where?
The contracted game dev costs.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. So trading costs is where CIG spent their money in different groups. Trading costs are broken down by territory. Yeah, and year into five broad categories. With much still to do, Cloud Imperium pushed forward with its objectives and the commensurate growth in its cost base accordingly. Costs increased, so basically saying that because there's a lot still to do in the projects, both Star Citizen and Squadron 42, which means that they also still have a lot to do in terms of the growth of CIG. Several years back, they said, I think it was in 2020, they said that their goal when they started up the new Manchester studio was by the end of 2023 to have 1,000 people working in that studio alone. And then by the end of 2026 to have 1,300 working in that studio alone. Now at the end here, they'll mention that all of CIG is up to over 1,100. And so they haven't reached their hiring goal for 2020 for 2023. Now they're getting close, but they're still a ways away. But that's what they're talking about in terms of objectives. And costs increased by 18% over 2021 to 116.5 million, and capital expenditures primarily for the flagship offices in Manchester, England, and the new facilities in Frankfurt, Germany, rose to 12.9 million compared to only 2 million in 2021. So basically, capital expenditures is all the stuff needed to build out those offices. Now, they don't own the building in Manchester. They lease it. They're leasing space in it, but they are leasing, I think it's a lot of the building. It's not the whole thing, but a good sizable portion. But they still have a lot of capital expenditures.
Story on this website about their leasing agreement. It's large and long.
And so it's all the computers, everything for the campus, everything. That's what that money is. And so when people worry about how much money they're spending, well, you don't repeat those expenditures year over year. Eventually these things will be repeating costs, but at a much lower amount, because you're not going to buy new computers every year. You're not going to buy new desks, and all the furniture and all that other sort of everything for that motion capture studio. You don't have to rebuy that every year. Now they will buy new things as new tech comes online and upgrade them, but your capital expenditures for these things aren't going to be $13 million this next year. So that number should go down.
I don't think they've officially said, but the last time CitizenCon was in Manchester, that event center is 2 blocks from the Manchester office.
Oh, where they had CitizenCon? Is that what you're talking about? Or
yeah.
Oh,
the last time CitizenCon was in Manchester is 2 blocks away from their current studio.
Oh, okay. I wonder if they'll have it there again, because it wasn't that big.
It's a bit small. It's a bit small of a venue, but yeah, like it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's right there.
Black Intellect says, I'm still patiently waiting on apologies from all the Reddit posts in 2018 that said CIG only had 6 to 8 months and 18 months and they'd be out of business. Yeah, 90 days tops. Yeah, what happened there? Black Intellect, are you gonna go to CitizenCon this year or this year too? I know we got to meet at CitizenCon out in Los Angeles. I won't. There's no way I'll get to go this year. I'm super stoked for you if you get to go this year though, because that's gonna be. If you think this year is big, I bet you this next year is going to be even bigger. Just saying.
Yep. My
Oh man.
April, I will know if I can or not. So
Yeah, Danger
you know
Hobo.
in
I've
April.
only ever been to Shannon, Ireland, and only the airport there, probably for the same thing. Dark Silver says it was great to. Oh, really good to meet you too. Glad we got to meet and hang out. I wish we had. I wish we had more time. Yeah. Let's see. So the breakdown of the expenditures commented upon in more detail below. The U.S. operations grew slightly in 2022, although like the previous year, there was a continued shift in the mix of personnel as publishing, community, and marketing teams grew, whilst internal development contracted in the U.S. So the publishing, community, and marketing teams in the U.S. those grew, but more of the internal development, the people who work on the game and build the game, are being hired in the UK and primarily, but also in Germany, versus being hired in the US studios. Although with a
Currently,
rise
there are
in
0 positions open for LA.
yeah, it's a very small office. It is itty bitty. Although with a rise in management of more external development resource, mainly from our associated entity Turbulent, which is based in Montreal. So Turbulent grew during 2022, and then of course they merged with CIG in 2023. But it's good that Turbulent was doing well enough, both from the work that they did for CIG, but also other work outside of CIG, that they were able to continue to grow. Rest of world operations grew considerably, with headcount up 18% on 2021. So that's pretty huge. The entire company grew by 18%. That's pretty dang good hiring. An additional space taken on to facilitate future growth. So that's the new studios. All cost areas except general and admin increased in 2022, although the growth in publishing operations was not as significant as in the previous year, which had set the groundwork for the projected growth in customer numbers and playtime, which trended upward toward the end of 2021 and continued on an even greater trajectory upward in 2022. So basically what they're saying is the amount of money that was spent on the publishing costs, hosting the game on Amazon Web Services, it grew, but it didn't grow as much as it did in 2021. Black and Luke says, I'm hoping they have a CitizenCon in Quebec in 2025. Is that where you're from? Are you in Canada? Hey?
Oh boy.
Yeah. So on to salaries and related on costs. And on costs means ongoing costs. Okay. So
NYC.
Quebec is close enough to NYC. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I live East Coast, so like it's a drive up the coast to get to Montreal. So yeah, that'd be nice. Let's see. Salaries and related on costs represents the total employee cost within the group, aka at CIG, employed inside one of CIG's offices, CIG, including service-oriented publishing, community, and marketing personnel. Whole salaries and related costs are included within that line cost, or within that cost line. I can dyslexic. This shows the salary cost increased in both territories, 6% up in the rest of the world and 16% up in the US. Development and G&A headcount increased in the rest of the world by 18%, although a lot of that was in entry-level positions in G&A and quality assurance. Required as CIG progresses with added features, content, playability, and players. Also, performance-related bonuses in 2022 were not as high as in 2021, and thus the increase in rest of world salaries did not match the increase in people. Despite generous pay awards designed to help cope with the rising inflation pressures felt throughout the economy. In contrast, the U.S. salary costs increased by 16% despite a reduction in development headcount by a moderate increase in G&A headcount. But additions were at the opposite end of the staff seniority spectrum, with highly experienced personnel in each discipline being added to the group. And regarding development, with senior experience, experienced people often replacing the more junior roles that were vacated. Also, cost and wage inflation levels were high in both U.S. office locations, which we aim to keep pace with. I would love to know how keeping pace they're going, but just to put that in their financial report is amazing.
Yeah.
Like they really are.
Pardon me.
Just such a good place to work, from what I've heard.
Yeah. So they did mention that they pay bonuses, and they paid the growth in bonuses. The performance related bonuses in 2022 were not as high as in 2021. So companies will pay bonuses, especially one-time bonuses or even recurring bonuses, in order to not permanently increase someone's salary during periods of inflation. Because that way they can pay you more without increasing your salary permanently while inflation is going up. And then when inflation settles down, okay, now we're not going to pay you a bonus this year, and you're still getting your salary, and that really didn't change. And so it's a temporary retention measure during inflation periods, rather than just doing salary increases across the board. This part's really encouraging to me because they say explicitly that they're successful in hiring more experienced game developers versus just hiring in more junior game developers, people fresh out of college and stuff. And I think this is really indicative of 2022 and especially going into 2023. It's a continued trend. There's been a lot of layoffs in the game dev industry. And so CIG has been very successful in being able to pick up a lot of the experienced developers. And I think that's a really good thing for all of us.
I think over the course of 2023, they are going to be able to catch a lot of devs that are coming out of these studios. Like,
so awful.
There's a ton of talent that's out on the streets right now. Like, I think it was 5,000 people this year, in addition to like the 500,000 last year. It's insane. Like, whole studios are being gutted. Now, not necessarily all disciplines. Some places are actually being held. But like entire, not main studios, but like subsidy studios, just completely killed and thrown out. And it's happening literally everywhere. I guess the tech industry at large had it the year before, and now it's hitting these, what I'm going to call over-bloated game studios. And as much as it sucks, echoing a lot of what Jared said in ISC or SCL, it sucks, and we wish them all the best. And I'm going to tack on a little bit more. I'm not I'm sad they're out of a job before being able to catch themselves. But I think for the game industry as a whole, I hope and think it will turn out better, because no longer is all this talent being sucked in by 5 studios.
Yeah, mega developers.
It's been proven in the game industry that when this stuff happens, they will fracture and they will make studios. So we're about to get, this will be the catalyst for an amazing indie dev year someday in the future, when all of these devs, well, not all of them, when a lot of these devs are going to start their own studios and make games with their colleagues, and we're going to see amazing works in a couple of years. So I really hope them all the best, and I can't wait to see what they do with it. Is this made by advertisers? Okay.
Yeah.
I wish.
Yeah. Please.
Who am I advertising for?
Yeah. Expat Brat says now is definitely the time for them to be taking a serious look at recruitment, especially in gameplay areas with regards to survival shooters, writers, and yep, 100%. And thanks for coming and hanging out with us this evening.
Arena Commander team is like, who's out there?
Hey, we got jobs over here. I do think it's also encouraging that they had a focus on and were successful in growing their quality assurance teams and roles. because that having more QA does help with the quality of the patches as once they get to us, and how quickly bugs are able to be found and addressed and fixed. So that's a good thing. I'm brain farting. What is G&A?
You just read it a minute ago. General and admin.
Did I? Oh, okay. General and admin. Gotcha.
It's fine. Everything's fine here.
Yep. So, other game development costs and overhead. Other game development costs represents the costs of operating the various studios. So basically, your overhead for any business, your what you pay for your lease, your utilities, that sort of stuff, including such expenses as office rental and maintenance, travel and accommodation, IT, and other costs not included elsewhere. In 2022, this cost category increased by 57% to $18.4 million. Why is that?
Boy, howdy, office is expensive.
Yeah, Manchester became a thing, so that's why you had so much.
Would this include also the lease of the Frankfurt building?
Yeah, well, yeah, Frankfurt and Manchester.
Yeah. So two offices. No, they signed a really big lease for one, and they're building basically not building the building, but they're basically a lot of the money. Like they basically took an entire building in Manchester, plus their partner studio that's helping them run the mocap studio literally next door, like literally within spitting distance of the Manchester office is. And Jared, you promised us a walkthrough about that.
Yeah,
we'll get back to that. He promised us a walkthrough of the new but motion cap studio.
Oh God, yeah, I want to see that. I want to see it in action. Some of this can be attributed to the. Oh, sorry.
I want to see the office and in action, but I also want to see like a client list. Who else is coming? Like,
oh yeah, who is booking time?
Movie studios are going to use this office. Other video game studios will use this office. This is not a CIG office, like the mocap studio, and I forget the name of it, but they're half in with another company doing this entire building, the stage. I just want to see it being used, something that CIG had a hand in being used by another company. And that is what I'm really excited for.
Maybe Henry Cavill and Amazon will do some motion capture stuff for the Warhammer 40K series that they're doing there. That'd be cool.
I forgot he was doing a Warhammer thing.
Yep. Some of this can be attributed to the end of pandemic lockdown restrictions, which increased office occupancy and stimulated inter-office and work-related travel. So yeah, we're
part of the crew,
part of the ship,
part of the crew, part of the ship, part of the crew, part of the ship, part of the crew, part of the ship.
Thank you for the follow, Uncle Curly. Really appreciate the support. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us this evening. So yeah, we're not being on lockdown, so part of it's travel costs. Thank you. Yeah, I love going and hanging out with Paul on Captain's Table. Nazeris has been on there many times as well. Paul is a good friend. Oh, cool. Good for you.
Yep.
Yeah, we're 2 weekends in a row, basically. Well, no, that wasn't this last weekend. The weekend before.
Right. Dart was on this one.
Yep. Yeah, thanks for coming and hanging out, bud. Appreciate it. Paul and I are planning on playing together and both streaming Helldivers 2 on the 8th when it releases. So if you're interested in that, come and hang out with us.
I've looked at this office far too many times. I was able to not look up the Manchester office and just find it visually.
Yeah, Expat Pratt, he really is a great host. Tons of fun. I enjoy hanging out with Paul as much as I enjoy hanging out with the other guests. He always does a really good job of bringing in great people from around the community. And you made a good point. Notice that it's the large AAA development companies releasing people while the indie and independent space are thriving and hiring, as if Chris Roberts could see the future. Yeah, and this is a life cycle. These people who are being laid off are going to gravitate towards one another, people that they worked with, people that they know from other studios, and they're going to form new studios to work on projects and shared interests. And it's a great time for indie games. I'm a big fan of indie games. A lot of the games I'm looking forward to the most are coming out of indie developers and small publishers. So, yeah.
I forget which heritage it is exactly, but EA, Activision, Blizzard, and Ubisoft did all the same thing. I don't remember which order it is, but basically everyone worked at EA. And then they said, we hate the culture here. Broke off and made Activision. And then that got so big, and they said, we hate the culture here. Broke off and made Blizzard. And then that got big, and they said, we hate the culture here. Broke off and made Ubisoft. So this is a continuation of that trend. Some studio is going to be formed by this that is going
it's
to...
almost like once a studio gets too big and corporate management takes over, especially if they get partly bought by venture capitalists, that the culture goes to shit. It's so weird. It's almost like all these people with business degrees are actually terrible managers. Yeah,
that's because game development is an art and they don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same thing in healthcare. Every clinician hates the office folks who make our lives miserable because they don't understand what we do and they don't care. I'm not bitter about it at all. Yeah. However, much of the increase was, as described in last year's update, due to the cost of substantially upgrading and increasing the office spaces taken in Manchester and Frankfurt, with the footprint in each location doubling the previous office sizes to facilitate the current and future planned expansion in those locations. So current and future. They ain't done growing. Next paragraph. Contracted game development costs, Nazeris.
That is somewhere on my desktop, I'm sure. Okay, here we are. All right. These represent the cost of contracted services supporting game development or game development work. For 2022, this increased by 24% to 10.8 million. External services used by the rest of the world reduced for the third year, running to 1.3 million, down 48%. So instead of contracting outside, they're building Manchester and just having the studio. 40% on 2021. As more work continued to be taken internally. However, the U.S. continued in the opposite direction with a 54% increase. I imagine that is not U.S., but North America, because that's turbulent, as they're about to say. Increase in external development costs principally through the growth in service provided by our associate Canadian entity, Turbulent, which expanded its development resources considerably in 2022 in response to our growing requirements. So, I'd like to read that again. Let's see where it actually started. However, the U.S. continued in the opposite direction with a 45% increase in external development costs, principally through the growth in services provided by our associate Canadian entity, Turbulent, which is expanding its development resource considerably in 2022 in response to our growing needs. Basically, they already owned most of the studio as far as the manpower being there. So going from 90% of the workers in Turbulent working on CIG projects to owning the studio, not only do they not have to pay that many more heads, but also the amount of red tape that they cut down on by having an internal studio, and they talked about this, I believe, in last year ISC, that it is way more efficient to get stuff out of the studio and into the studio now that it is an in-house studio. So the costs went way down. They don't have to do a ticketing contract system for every bug and every feature they need from Turbulent anymore. Yeah, so even though they bought more devs,
it's much more cost effective for them to be doing the same work, but under the umbrella versus outside. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that. That's a much more simpler way of putting it. External development managed through the U.S. increased by 3.3 million to 9.5 million, but this was more cost effective than growing our internal development teams in high cost location housing in our U.S. offices, aka LA and Austin are expensive.
Yep.
As far as places to live.
This is a really good point to bring up right now because while Turbulent does have other contracts besides the work that they do for CIG, CIG is the bulk of their work. And the bulk of the, let's open this in new tab. The bulk of contracted game dev costs, this 10 million figure over here on the right, the bulk of this, the overall majority of this is Turbulent and because the bulk of Turbulent's work is for CIG, basically when everybody was worried about, okay, how are they bought Turbulent, and it's like, well, no, they merged with Turbulent because they were already paying for Turbulent to exist. And so they merged with Turbulent. They didn't have to spend a bunch of money to buy Turbulent. There was a like when they did their initial transaction, there was an exchange of essentially ownership stocks, and the owners of Turbulent essentially got a little bit of ownership of CIG, and CIG got 25% ownership of Turbulent. No money was exchanged, and so there was a merger. CIG didn't buy Turbulent; they merged with them in order to make their operations more cost effective. So they didn't spend they didn't buy Turbulent for $50 million or whatever. They merged with them, and whoever owns Turbulent probably got some more ownership in CIG, but there probably wasn't any sort of massive check written. And we're not going to see a large increase in their operating costs because they're already paying for them right here. This money right here is, instead of being light blue, is going to change to dark blue in 2023 going into 2024.
Way down next year.
Yeah.
So that increased, what was it, 54%. So 54% of that
the growth
bar,
in here. Yeah.
Yeah, the growth from last year to there is going to piff away in this next year. So it's going to be at least 54, if not more, reduced in the U.S. or North America.
It just depends on when the transaction occurred.
Turning it.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether it's in the 2023 financial year or the 2024 financial year, depending on when it actually shows up.
And if you want to learn more about Turbulent, they have their own website. And you can go on their own website and you can see some of the projects that they are working on. One of the tools that Turbulent has built is not only used by CIG, but is used by other games, other AAA games. And I forget the name of the tool, but I read an article about it. And the article is I think it's on their website. And so they're paid by these other companies for the use of this tool, as well as CIG paying for it. And now that money, it's not Rastar, it's
it's the issue council.
The issue council. There you go. The issue council tool, the web tool, is a thing that they have built and used, and it's not just used by CIG and Star Citizen. It's used for other games.
Yep.
And that's just one example.
Expat says, I think Turbulent is thinking of the future projects utilizing the Star engine and placing them in a pivotal role to facilitate other publishers using use of the engine with other titles. There goes his name. Brian Chambers, specifically at CitizenCon, said they have no plans right now to become a game engine company. That nobody in CIG right now is planning on selling Star Engine. This is Star Citizen's engine. Nowhere do they have people or devs to spare to help teach and maintain the engine outside the office.
Yep.
It may sound pretty easy, just wrap a bow onto Star Engine and say, here, Ubisoft or EA, take this engine and make your own games with it. It's not. There's a reason why Unreal Engine and Unity are entire companies. Sure, Unreal Engine has its studio that makes Fortnite, but Unreal Engine's a entire company. Unity is an entire company. There's a reason
I could
why
see
there
it
has to be
happening
an
in the
entire
future,
company behind it.
but it's not going to happen anytime soon because they would have to train so many more people to do the
And the
support
extensive
job.
documentation that Brian Chambers said they don't have for external use.
Yep.
So it may happen in the future. Obviously, never say never, but it's never within sight. There is
They need
no
to be a
point
lot
on any
closer to
calendar.
being more finished with the engine before they could even consider licensing it.
Finished,
and
and
supporting
honestly, you need to publish a game before anyone's going to buy your engine.
Yeah. I think it could happen. I don't
So-
think it's going to happen anytime soon. But
Yeah.
because that
Definitely,
Yeah.
like, you need to publish a game. There's a lot of dev costs to maintain, to bug fix, to customer support, and it's not on anyone's radar right now.
yeah,
Like,
Sylvan
everyone
is
expects
still
it.
working.
I was
on-
right there. Like, they're gonna sell this.
Yeah.
They made a trailer to sell their engine. That's not what the trailer was for. The trailer was to show us, the backers, and other devs in the office, how awesome their tech is. It was not
Yeah.
for shareholders and selling their engine.
Sylvan is still working on Vulkan and ray tracing and all of that. He does not have the time to be taking phone calls from other developers on how to do something within his engine or doing work in order to incorporate something into the engine for them to use.
Or bug
And that's
fixing their
not
crap.
Yeah, and that's not his job. That would be someone else who Sylvan would have to train. Essentially, for an example, Sylvan's the essentially the graphics guy, or the graphics tech guy. So yeah.
And then copy paste that through every single, the graphics team, the server team, the FPS team, the ship team, all of these different things.
Expat Brat, I am with you right there. Give me more and better Star Trek games for sure.
Definitely. But I don't know why, but for Star Citizen specifically, I want a Star Wars game. And I'm not a Star Wars fan like a lot of people around me. I just like the spaceships. I really like the spaceships. Like,
I do like
really
Star
psyched
Wars
for,
ships
Eclipse
better
and
than
things.
Star Trek. Yeah.
I'm really psyched for the Eclipse game and Outlaws because it's Star Wars without Jedi. If they throw stupid Jedi or Sith crap in there, I'm going to be very upset. The world that George Lucas and his writing team built is way bigger than Force powers. I need them to stop putting in stupid Jedi and things to use as focal points in storytelling for their crap stories. Stop it. It's a wonderful world. I want to live in it.
I am excited for Outlaw or Outlaws.
With the fluffy dog oxalol thing. Gib. That modding of the engine was part of it. There's a lot of the Kickstarter that was thrown out a couple years ago. Modding is private servers. That Squadron 42 was going to be a location in Star Citizen. A lot of the underlying tech was just completely nowhere as far as where it ended up. A lot of the stuff in the Kickstarter just is not happening because there was a fundamental change. Basically, when they said, hey, we can do planets, they basically took everything they said previous to that, balled it up and threw it away. The entire development changed at that point. They started really thinking of, we have way more money than we need. We have this engine that we can make way better. It's just going to take a lot longer. And I think we can do single server world or single shard world. There we go. And they basically said, we're going to go for that. And so they packed it up and they started working on Star Engine. And then everything changed.
Yep.
So we have no idea what's going to happen with all those things they sent in the Kickstarter. Because they did have a game. Like, they only said it was coming, that Squadron was going to come out in 2016, 2 years before that. So they were well into development of a 2016 version of Squadron. it would have been way smaller, crappier. I suppose you could use that word compared to the one we have now. It would have looked like an early 2000s game or a mid 2000s game.
Much simpler.
Yeah, it would have been much more blocky, a lot of less detail, a lot less polish.
It wouldn't have been next gen. Yeah,
Basically, we have a
getting
sequel
is
to that.
Yeah.
Easy. We're working on Squadron 42, Mark II, and Star Citizen 2 right now. They completely threw out version 1 of those.
Mm-hmm.
And for better or for worse, this is where we're at.
Let's keep going. Publishing operations, community events, and marketing. These costs are associated with running the game and deploying online services. That's what publishing operations is. And actually, I'm going to open up this image again. Here's publishing marketing right here. Almost $30 million for publishing and marketing costs. It costs CIG a crap ton of money. Now, obviously, some of this is marketing, but they have a very small marketing budget. The majority of this, and they haven't said exactly how much, but the majority of it is publishing costs. It also includes the cost of running our platform, publishing, data hosting, and server costs. It includes revenue collection, customer liaison costs, and the cost of our marketing and commuting events. This cost line correlates closely with income and user engagement, and the growth experienced in 2021 continued in 2022, rising 18% to $29.9 million. So obviously, as more people are playing the game, obviously the hosting of the game gets more expensive. They are flooding YouTube with ads, but YouTube ads are cheap. Dirt freaking cheap. So it's...
Especially skippable ones.
Yeah, at one point, a couple years ago, they said how much it costs, but the majority of this orange is your publishing and platform costs. You know, the hosting of the game and all the website stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of website stuff is expensive. I can't wait to see this for 2024 because of server meshing.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
it's gonna go.
The more I talk about server meshing and server costs, like maybe it's just a little too much hopium, but I think last patch of this year, maybe falling into the first patch of next year, is dynamic server meshing.
Yeah,
because
it could very well happen.
The overhead of server meshing for 4 servers is it's going to cost a lot. Because each shard is a static 4 servers. So anytime, like, if you're at like 101 players, that spawns 4 servers.
Yeah, that's why they said multiple times they need to quickly move from static to dynamic. Lou Hodo, first time chat. Thanks for joining us this evening. Hope you're doing well. Appreciate you coming and hanging out. CIG is getting a discount on hosting through Amazon Cloud. Yeah, they do get a discount,
yes.
But it still costs them a crap ton of money. You know,
and we have no idea if that deal still exists because Lumberyard doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Lumberyard was sunsetted and turned into an open source engine thing.
It is just a big expenditure because there's a lot. You know, there's several million people who play the game. You know, hundreds of thousands of players play. Unique players play every month. You know, and there are over 2 million people who have backed the game.
And
so it's
Aodonin said, "Remember, the more we use the website, the more it costs them."
Yep.
So the more players, the more servers, or the more players, the more website traffic, the more throughput they need on the website, the more players, the more servers they need to spin up for the game.
Yeah. They did say at one, oh gosh, where did I hear this? Was sometime in like the last year. They said that less than 5% of the original code from CryEngine is left. There's like nothing left there. Yeah.
And Lumberyard was going to be a lot of trash removed. Lumberyard was a lot of trash removed from CryEngine because a lot of the systems need to be modernized, and that's what CIG's main role was, handing that code Amazon was modernizing all those legacy systems as they already did. So basically, Lumberyard just like, we'll take that. Here's your, servers. So
The bulk of publishing and marketing operations run through the US, Austin and Los Angeles, respectively, which accounted for 71% of spend in this cost category. Those departments grew again in 2022, with the US adding 28 people to its headcount, and the rest of the world also adding 10 people. So a lot of people are being added to those teams, publishing and marketing operations. This represents the increased costs and demands associated with operating what is effectively a live game, albeit an early access one that is not yet out of its alpha phase. That's what we were just talking about. But nevertheless, it is vital to support our growing community and customer base and ensure the engagement of our players in the rich environment we have created. Thus, we continue to spend money on our servers, platform, and community tools to make the Star Citizen experience as comprehensive, safe, and enjoyable as possible. And some of the marketing money that did go to CitizenCon, but CitizenCon also sells tickets. And there was, $200 to $300 a ticket. Times seven, what was it? 2,500, 3,500 people. That's a lot of money. That's, probably well over $500,000, so it's,
yeah. And as they talked about when they tried doing the online tickets, like that in-person cost does not nearly cover running the event. Is why they attempted to do the online tickets to try and get closer to that recouping cost for the event. The internet said no, which I understand. I also didn't really like it, but it's like event. I've not been in the realm of event planning, and I know that like running live events is just murder on both manpower and cost.
Yep.
They are nuts.
Yeah, and I mean the tickets only offset part of the cost of the event, but we also didn't have the entire event center. We had one event hall. It's a big convention center. There's a lot of the convention center that we didn't use. We only used a portion of it. So, it does cost a lot of money. Okay, so moving on to, oh geez, that one just keeps going.
Yep.
Why don't you read the first three paragraphs, the first three small paragraphs?
All right. General and admin. These costs represent insurance, There's a T in there. Accountancy. Accountancy. Why does that word not sound like a word to me? Just accounting. Why not just call it accounting? And other professional and legal fees not appointed directly into the cost areas identified previously. Other factors outside the headcount and operational costs can impact these costs. And in 2022, they reduced slightly to $1.4 million. These represent capital expenditures in areas such as hardware and software, fixtures and fittings on offices. Whilst it trends with staff members, it also is
It's
impacted by hardware
with
renewals,
CapEx and investments,
server upgrades, and other security and infrastructure purchases. So is this where?
No, general admin ended right here, and then now we're in CapEx and investments. It's a separate paragraph. So yes, this is where them buying all their new computers and stuff and everything for starting to get the new office is under CapEx and investments.
Got it. Okay, so mine was just a little paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to keep reading?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
I'd missed that. It stops here. I'll do headcount analysis.
Okay. Is included with this accounting as it represents an outlay for the materials required to develop and publish the games, since the total capital expenditure amount is included here. We do not list the depreciation portion of such expenditures subsequently in the cost analysis. CapEx spending in 2022 was $12.9 million. in part due to the headcount increase in the office and computer equipment required for those new staff members, but mainly as a consequence of the new office in the rest of the world location, where we have built fantastic destination places to encourage in-office work and participation, aka they made their offices really nice because they really want people to be in the office, not at home working remotely. And people are like, oh my God, their offices are so overblown, so luxurious, blah, 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 blah. They needed to do that. And a lot of offices need to do that because they don't want people to fuss at them for having to come into work. And so they made like this a destination workplaces so they didn't have that pushback. So that they
It's
can
a
say, hey,
recruitment
hey,
and
we want
retention
you to
tool.
work in, a retention tool. It is specifically designed to be a nice place to work. Like they said about their bonuses, and they're trying to keep up with inflation in the U.S. This is another tool that it sounds scummier than it is. It's just them trying to build a place that they want their players, their corporate players, their employees, to actually feel wanted, to actually have the same idea as the people running the company, which is be in the office. Instead of saying, we're not going to hire you unless you're in the office, make the office a place they want to be. It has games. It has coffee shops almost. Their lounges. Like, it's a good place to work. They gave Jared an entire studio that looks like a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
They did
Wonder
that
how much that cost.
I don't want to know. I just don't want to know. So they did that on a lot of places for a lot of people. I imagine they took requests on what these kind of people wanted in the office.
Yep.
Because it is a tool to make sure that, because they have the data, in-house, in-office working in game development, specifically in game development or in any art type thing, flows better when you have the people in the offices instead of remote. And I can tell
that's why work
firsthand,
from home during
remote
COVID was so hard.
artwork is hard. Like, it's hard to find times to meet. It's hard to get ideas across. It's hard to actually pull ideas together. I can say that firsthand.
So
continuing on. What?
Oh yeah. Oh, I thought you were finished. My bad.
Nope. Just places where our projects are extremely complex and time-consuming to build and support, it is important that we provide the best environment for our people to enjoy the hours of work being undertaken.
Yeah. So obviously,
was this run through a market team? Heck yeah, it was. But it's still true.
So obviously, they're going to continue to have capital expenditure costs as they continue to grow in Manchester and hire more people. But because of how many people have been hired, and a lot of that is just initial, like they'll buy computers in bulk and such, and they'll sit on them until the people get hired, because it's cheaper to buy a whole bunch of the workstations that they use at once rather than buy them piecemeal as people get hired. So I don't expect this big green block will probably be substantially smaller next year. And so that's a good thing, because CIG, in the 2023 report, because CIG made more money than in 2022, but they probably will have less in terms of capital expenditures. So they'll be able to continue to, instead of spending money on capital expenditures, they'll be able to hire more people and continue to grow the company. So that's a good thing. Headcount analysis. And this is just talking about how many people are in what parts of the company, or what sort of disciplines, and then where they are located. So the headcount analysis represents the people working at the end of the year under the broad disciplines identified. Note, it is not average people numbers for the year. Employee numbers increased by 112. They hired 112 people in 2022 to 860 worldwide by the end of 2022. The U.S. headcount increased by 16, with a continuing rise in publishing, marketing, and community staff, plus 28, surpassing the reduction in development headcount, minus 15, as the U.S. focused on certain development activities and managing more external development through Turbulent in Montreal. The rest of the world headcount grew by 96, 18%, mainly in development with a focus on quality assurance. 10 publishing, marketing, and community roles were also added, and unsurprisingly, the general and admin support staff numbers increased commensurately in 2022. This would be like your HR people. By the end of the year, the rest of the world represented 73% of the global headcount, up from 70% last year. Although the U.S. now also managed over 150 dedicated people with dedicated people working with our internal development, publishing, and marketing teams through Turbulent. So, at the end of 2022, they are at 860 people, and they actually said 870 in the letter from the chairman. At the end, you'll see that they'll mention here in a little bit at the very end that there are over 1,100 people, which is nuts because that's 140. They added over 240 people to the headcount. Now a lot of that was Turbulent, but they still hired a whole bunch of people as well. So Zarek, what people are saying that they made less money than 20. They're talking about profit. And profit when you're trying to grow the company is a bad thing, because if you have a big if you have big profits, you have more revenues over your expenditures. It means you're not spending money to hire more people. You're not spending money to build, to grow your offices and everything like that. CIG is growing and needs to grow in order to increase production. And so, they've even been in the red a couple of times, not by a lot, but they've been in the red. You can scroll back up here.
It's down.
Nope, it's down. Sorry,
it's down. It's under the paragraph you're reading.
Here we go. Cumulative net position, and we're just going to divulge. There's only 1 year where they were in the red. 1 year. That was in 2019. In terms of cumulative net position, where they had to actually, in the red in terms of they they ate out of their minority investments. So, so starting in 2012, they made this much, their cumulative net position was this much money. And they were bringing in, for 2012, 2013, 2014, they were bringing in so much money, they couldn't spend it fast enough. So they had this giant surplus of $25 million. And so then they're like, oh gosh, we need to spend this money. We need to grow this company. And so for these years, they were digging into their savings all on top of spending the money they're bringing in to grow the company. And at this point is where, okay, here's their savings left here in 2018. At the end of 2018, they had $7 million left in savings. That's when we need to continue to grow the company, but our revenues aren't where we need them to be. And so they took on that private investment. And the reason their revenues weren't where they needed them to be, their net position, is because of publishing costs, how much it cost them to host the game. And so they said, when they took on this minority investment, this money and this money were earmarked for platform costs, for hosting the game and such, as well as marketing costs. So that way, the revenues coming in wouldn't be used for the hosting of the game. And so then they, turned it back around, and they got to the point where they were, had a big old surplus in 2020, and they're like, well, crap, we can't have this giant surplus. If we're having this giant surplus, this money gets taxed. And so they're adding to their money saved again in 2020, and then they did again a little bit in 2021, and then even more in 2022. You see, so this is their net balance, not including this is their net position after the investments. So the money that they've earmarked. Does that make sense? Yes. So they're doing a good job in 2021 and 2022 of spending what they're making in order to not get taxed on it and to grow the company appropriately. and 2023 will probably look much the same.
Are you talking about? So Xbox says the issue I always have, or always is having, is the XMI is great, but ship sales to get it irks me sometimes, and the quality of the product launch sometimes less than ideal. Are you talking about the ships that are launched to these ship sales things that irks
Yeah.
you? Because
I don't like
marketing.
using ship sales
They've
to make
said
money.
they said flat out last year, marketing does not have its hand anywhere near ship development. There is no part of the marketing team that tells the ship teams what ships to make. And the quality of their products when launched is up to the ship team. So if you don't like the ships or the patches or whatever have you, as you are upset the development team, not at marketing. Marketing's job is to take whatever the ship team or the development teams are making and make it look like you want to play it and look like you want to buy it. It is not their job to tell the company what to make and what ships to make.
I think the issue is that a lot of people don't like using ship sales as their main source of revenue, and I agree with that. And you and I did a podcast on that.
Yep.
Because ship sales are not going to dominate their revenues forever. There's a reason that these minority investments came in 2018 and 2019. Think about what games were coming out in that time and making money hand over fist and how they're making it. CIG, Star Citizen, is specifically built to allow for massive amounts of customization of player-owned things. And how do you make money in video games these days? You have microtransactions. And you have microtransactions on things that are aesthetics. So
I compare the
base buildings,
the MSR, etc. ships in the past versus the new ones. Yeah, the new ones are way better.
Yeah.
I don't understand by that statement how the quality is lacking sometimes. They've gotten compare the Connie to the Cutter.
Yeah.
Way better.
I think
the
I don't know,
art
maybe
is better, it's higher quality, it's better laid out, it's better more gameplay. What's wrong with the whole seat? The whole seat's great. Love the whole seat.
I think the functionality. It has a
that was put in just because the ship was done and they figured, hey, maybe we can spend a month and make the whole seat functional in game.
Yeah. I think I'm picking up what Expat Brad is throwing down, and that like I don't like ship sales. I think it's not a great way it works to fund the game right now, but I think that the things will be a lot better balanced when the game is funded by people who just of their own volition want to buy decorative items for their hab or their ship or their hangar or their player owned outpost or clothing items and such, just like you do in any other games, because you want to express yourself. I think it's a much better way to fund the game and make lots of money versus people buying ships, because buying ships is at least partly buying progression, and that's not great.
No, I can agree with that. I can completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I just think they're being slow about it because they're being slow about it. It's their entire company up to a couple of years ago was built on selling ships because that's all they had. That's all the tech they were able to produce was ships. Mm-hmm. Now that they have the game mostly done, they can dip back into these dev costs and to get all this stuff. And I don't think we're going to really see a change until housing comes in.
Let's see, where is... Here it is. I found the scanner anomaly that Naz and I did. Was that a scanner anomaly? Oh. We did a scanner anomaly called Star Citizen's Future Funding Model. I'm going to drop it in chat. I encourage everybody to check it out. Lots of good citations in the show notes in chat. I felt like it was a really good discussion that we had. But I think, and part of it is a little bit of tinfoil hat, but it's pretty well supported based off of what Naz and I know about how the game has been developed and the features and the technology that are being developed, but also this stuff, the finances, because Naz and I have read all these reports, and there's a whole bunch of other things that posts that are related to these investments and such, and the information that came out of it.
So I also have bad news for you, expat. There was never a plan to stop making ships. There's
Yeah.
still no plan to stop making ships.
They have
Even
said
if
that
it
they
is only sold in
eventually.
game, there's
yeah.
never a plan to stop.
Oh yeah, to stop making ships. But yeah, they did say in the past that they did want to stop selling ships.
Selling them for real money, yeah.
I don't know if that'll
There is a
eventually
hope.
happen, but I do think
There's a hope to stop selling
won't be
ships.
it won't be the dominant line item for funding in the future.
And also, as we read earlier in the report, like most of their money that came out of the year was not from new ships. It was from starter packs.
Yep.
So
because of the conversion rate. If you want to read these first two paragraphs of the overall part,
it won't slow down either. It's only going to get faster from here. Didn't we talk about how? Yeah, we also did one about ships and how they're going to make more ships.
Oh no, he's talking about.
We also have a show on that.
Slow down in terms of like the sales, like we were talking about. It won't be the.
Oh yeah, no, it will
won't be
slow
the
down.
thing that.
Yeah.
It won't be the big
as
driver
far as production
of funding.
of ships. Like we're gonna get maybe 20 ships a year sometimes. Depends on the size of the ship, what they would do, and what they want to do with it. But yeah, ships are basically what Star Citizen is, and they've said that before. Star Citizen ships is
Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
All right.
Hey, thanks for the
Part of the
follow.
ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Where'd you say it was starting?
Yeah, and Dale, I totally agree with you because the FOMO marketing for ships is cringy.
Sucks.
I don't like it. And I want to see them make more ships. I just don't want them to be, I don't want the FOMO marketing. I don't want them bought out of game. I want them earned in game. I want to see a new patch come out with a new star system or two and a new ship. And if anything, I would like to see ships be localized in where you can buy them. Kind of like here in the real world, like I can't go get what's a European car? A Pugo. I can't get one here in the US. There are certain US manufacturers, that or other you might have to go to a different system to get this ship. Or you might have to, have it be tied to in-game things. So I think I'm much in agreement with Expat Brat, and I hope it'll move away from that.
Yes, I look forward to a theoretical day when the ship isn't told and then shows up in the patch.
Yep.
Because they've just kind of went away from talking about it, and that's not the focus of the patch anymore. It's other things. It's the new planet. It's the new system coming in. It's the
Aether Drift
gameplay coming in.
It needs to be less of a thing because the marketing for it and the paying for progression is really not great for the game. People complain about microtransactions, but microtransactions are fair because you're just buying something that's as long as it's just things that are aesthetic. I want to have this color armor and anyone can get it in game. And it just looks cool because I like the way it looks, or I want to buy this piece of furniture, to decorate my hab or my my outpost, or I want to buy this poster to hang up in my ship, in the break room or something. That's fine because it doesn't give you an advantage. It doesn't give you progression in the game. It's entirely just things to look at and collect. Payugo, I don't know what it's spelled. The only time I've ever seen a Pugo, however that is in Iraq. So I'm like, oh, I've never seen that. I shot a lot of them. I filled them full of holes because people tried to dry them into me with explosives and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and paints is
this
just
is a
one
debate
aspect
that will go
of it.
on, and this is a debate or a conversation, not even debate. This is a conversation that will go on until the game dies. It really will. There are people on all sides of the argument and all ways of looking at it.
Yeah, I'm mostly thinking about it in a perspective of what is CIG looking at in a way to make more money and make more money long term, and what did they come up with in terms of a plan in order to entice these people who invested all this money and own 15% of the company to do so. They said, hey, look at what Fortnite's doing. Look at what Warzone's doing. We can do that, but a whole lot better because we're going to have this tech that allows us to do that for not just your character, but your ship, your hab, your hangar, your outpost, the whole shebang. No other game has ever given you as much ownership as Star Citizen is trying to give you. Yeah. Puget sound? Yeah. Okay, so Naz, if you want to read these first two paragraphs, and I'll read the last three, and then we can wrap this up.
Under here. Okay. In keeping with prior years in 2022, accounting shows the group continued to spend its income on the ongoing development and publishing of the games in its unrelenting objective to deliver a world-class gaming and social experience, I can speak, I swear, for its players and the community. Besides reinvesting into its people and partners, particularly Turbulent in Canada, whose teams servicing Cloud Imperium games grew considerably during the year. It also put substantial funds into its new offices and facilities to create a destination space for its post-COVID returning staff, creating an environment to encourage collaboration, innovation, and creativity. To make all the hard work undertaken and still to come more pleasant for the growing number of people working on these games. Consequently, the funds on the balance sheet moved little in 2022, despite a very successful year, and they remain earmarked for the future activities planned and required to push the game forward to the commercial launch and the ongoing evolution of the underlying technology and intellectual property being developed. Now, that's a statement that a lot of people like, because intellectual property normally means other things other than just releasing a game. Are there going to be Squadron 42 merch? That's weird to think of, but probably.
Yeah. This is just reiterating what they said years ago when they took on the investment, that these monies down here are earmarked for the commercial launch. So they're earmarked for the marketing of Squadron 42 and ongoing evolution of underlying technology, the platforming costs, because we all, as Nazeris said, when static server meshing comes out, their platform costs are going to skyrocket. Because instead of, like Nazeris said, once you reach that threshold of servers too full, and now you need to spend one new server for these 5 new people that joined, now you have to spin up 4. Even though there's only 5 new people, and that'll fill up and everything, but you have a lot more servers to serve obviously, like, the player count will probably go up, but it won't go up enough to make that break even. Their platform costs are going to go up substantially, and that's going to eat into this bottom line down here, along with all the money that they're going to spend on marketing for continuing the I held the line thing and leading up to Squadron 42, because they'll probably spend millions, if not tens of millions of dollars on marketing. Considering other games spend hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing. There are games that spend as much on marketing as they did on the entire development of the game, which is just criminal.
I forget what company it was and what game it was, but their marketing budget dwarfed their development cost.
Oh, it was Cyberpunk 2077. Their marketing budget, their development budget was a couple $100 million, and their marketing budget was equally a couple $100 million. Like, the total cost to develop the game was like, I don't remember, $500,000 or $600,000 or something like that. Maybe it was more. I don't remember. But there's been multiple games in recent history, AAA games, where the amount spent on marketing was equal or more than the amount spent on development. And everybody complains about how much Star Citizen has raised, but they're like, all the money's gone into development. They spend very little on marketing. It's a tiny line item compared to everything that's spent on development. And it's because people don't even look at this shit. It's like, no, if Cyberpunk had spent more of that marketing budget on the game, it wouldn't have released in the state that it did. And CIG is trying to avoid it by spending money on developing the game. Yeah. Adelianar, and yet marketing runs the game. Kappa, cannot stress the Kappa. Yeah. Idiots. When I hear people say that, I'm not even going to be nice about it. You're a fucking moron. Because you just don't read and you haven't a clue. All right. Please continue, Nazers. Rant over. Maybe.
Am I going to the next one? Just one more from you?
Oh, no. Sorry. That's my bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
At the time of writing... Yeah. At the time of writing, I am pleased to report that in 2023, we have made great strides in that respect, and despite the significant cost of dedicating more resources to Squadron 42 at the expense of ongoing regular releases on Star Citizen, particularly in the first 3 quarters of 2023, we have progressed Squadron 42 to a level of feature complete.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
The Aussie Viking, thank you so much for the follow. Thanks for joining us this evening. Hope you're doing well.
That is an interesting combination.
Yeah.
It's like the extremities of both hemispheres. Because Vikings are Norwegian and Australia's like the last country before
opposite.
Antarctica.
We have progressed Squadron 42 to a level of feature complete, which is a very significant step on our roadmap to final release for this hugely ambitious AAA game. At our first physical CitizenCon in several years at the Los Angeles Convention Center, we unveiled the progress we made behind closed doors, and we were happy to show how this will translate into the Star Citizen universe and the ongoing releases that are planned over the coming months and years. This is part of why, so this paragraph right here is part of why Naz and I decided to do the Spectrum Pulse that we just did before this, looking at 323 and 4.0 and 2024 because of this. It's all tied together.
And I'm expecting any day now for them to announce the briefing room.
Yep.
Or whatever is going to be the stand-in for the briefing room, because every time they bring up making Squadron video content, they change what their plan is. So whatever is going to stand in for the briefing room. But Chris rather liked the briefing room, from what I could tell. So I would even be expecting it in the next what's happening this month. What is it called? This month in Star Citizen. I'm shocked it wasn't in this month's. So they did say 12 months leading up to the release, right?
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and watch it. Because they did say when they were planning on putting it back up in relation to its launch. But they also
expat,
really don't want to say...
I get what you're saying. And here's the thing. CIG discloses so much information to us. Such absurd amounts of information to us across things like this, the monthly reports, all the different posts, the devs on Spectrum, the devs being regularly available and answering questions. Yeah, I believe them. I really do, because I think that saying that there's a chance that they're lying, yeah, they probably smooth certain things over a little bit here and there, sure. But they also readily admit their faults on a regular basis.
But even in a normal company, it's not marketing's job. It's literally not their job to develop things. It is their job to say, oh, you've given me a game that's half broken and nobody wants to play because, they spawn and they fall into the ground. Talk about Cyberpunk. Their job is not to say, no, this isn't marketable. Their job is to market that product. And that's what marketing does. It says, you've given me a heap pile of crap. I have to make it look good.
Yeah. That's what marketing does.
A lot
marketing
of people
does their
don't
job.
understand that that's where marketing comes in. Marketing did not say, well, cut costs here, Cyberpunk. Don't develop that section. That was the executives, not marketing.
Yeah. Marketing has no influence on development. They don't tell them how to develop the game. They don't tell them what to develop. All they do is market the product that's available. And yeah, I will give them shit. And I've said it on Captain's Table. I've said it on this podcast. I am not a fan of the marketing team. I love the community team. They are closely related, but they're not the same team. But I'm not a fan of the marketing team and the marketing leadership, because I do agree that some of their marketing has been very disingenuous. And I don't think that's a good look, and I don't think it's appropriate, especially because CIG, Star Citizen sells itself. But it's if CIG spends all their money on development, very little money on marketing. They're going to spend more money on marketing, but even if they spend an appreciable percentage of this on marketing, their marketing budget won't even be a tiny fraction of what other games have done in recent years. And that's after they've spent, well over $500 million on development. That's a good thing. CIG has earned my trust. That's all I'm saying. And other game developers have betrayed my trust at every fucking turn. And it's because the companies are led by venture capitalists and corporatists, and not game developers. And so they care about making money and not developing video games, and CIG cares about more about making video games than they do about making money. Yeah. Expat Brad says, do you think there's any chance that they do, where'd it go? Consider what to focus on this month and what to release to continue bringing interest to the game? Nope. I think they release things and add things to the game when they're ready.
I think
because we have so many examples over the years.
Ship Roundtable. Yeah. I think it was on the last Ship Roundtable they did. They flat out said that's not where marketing is allowed to speak. They speak at the end. It's the only team that has to deal with ships or features that's not allowed to speak until the end. Every other team gets a say before the end. Marketing is handed the product and said, you sell this. And marketing's job is not to con people. It's not, even though a lot of people call their stuff cons because they try and show the game as it could be, not as it is. Opinions be there. But it's their job not to con them, not to bait and switch. It is their job to market the product they're given. It is the universal job of marketing to market the product given. They've said a lot on how features, how ships, how improvements, how bugs are prioritized. If it was marketing's job to prioritize, they would say, get the bugs out of the game now. Because a finished game is more marketable than an alpha. You are scaring people away. You are not able to get more people in the game because you labeled it an alpha, because there's a bug in the game.
If marketing had involvement, they would cut things back and we'd have a much simpler game.
And a more marketable game. Basically, we'd have Fortnite.
We wouldn't be getting Star Citizen if marketing had any say in it. Because, as it is right now, it is not a marketable thing.
I think even like this last week, they've talked about, it was with the Carrick. They prioritize fixing stuff that will have the biggest effect because of where we are in development. It's in the middle of alpha. It is not the time to fix all the bugs. So if they have time to fix a bug, they want their time to be spent on the biggest impact. So, core features are being developed. That's why we're getting server meshing, not, inputs, money maker 5,000 here.
Yeah, they're developing the game that they want to sell in the future, not the game that they want to sell right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's keep going because we got to wrap this up. It's 11:30 my time, so it's really late for you. Let's see. In 2023, we were also very pleased to have completed the acquisition of Turbulent. that we announced in July. As noted in this and previous reports, Turbulent has become an important part of our operations, and we have been working with them since the early days of the company's founding. They understand us and our goals, and thus it was natural that we would formalize that relationship and bring their key people into our leadership team. It is great to harness the skills and talents of the 200 plus people working there. So Turbulent grew like by over 50 people over 2023.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy because they talked about it up here that their headcount was like 150 or something like that working there, who augment our internal teams and represent a large part of our worldwide workforce, which now exceeds 1,100. Now, they say 1,100 right here, but I do remember specifically at CitizenCon CR saying 1,300. So maybe he misspoke, but I'm not sure. No, don't worry about it, Expat. This is a podcast. We're hanging out, talking in chat. I appreciate the conversation.
The 13 was
don't take it the wrong way.
Contractors.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It could be. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if it was said, but basically what we're reading now is current, not from 2021. This is like, hey, in the interim after this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this part down here is now versus looking at it, 2022. Because the rest, the rest of this is 2022 info. In conclusion, 2023 has not been an inexpensive year, but we have had a great record-breaking again. And so we all know from just looking at the sales ticket counter on the CIG website that they sold more in terms of like ships and stuff like that, pledges and what have you on the store than they did last year. But we only know about, where'd it go? This is the only part that we see on the website. And so we don't know how subscriptions and other incomes did for this year. And so this number, or this number right here, we know is bigger for this year. We don't know how much bigger this number is over this number for 2022. We can assume that they made more money, more total income, but we don't know because we don't know what these look like. Now we can probably safely assume that subs went up, but it's not a huge, these haven't been huge changes. But because we know that some of this other income is government incentives, we can assume that this probably stayed the same, if not maybe went up. It just depends on how much hiring and investment CIG did in 2023 compared to in 2022, because that's what really influences these incomes. So it'll be interesting to see what this total number here, total income, looks like in 2022 for 2023.
I just must stream too early because they're like, yes, we'll keep you streaming indefinitely. Like, where are you guys at when I stream?
Oh gosh. All these late night Sunday folks.
Jeez.
Yeah, and we've got let's see, what is it? What's the real time say? We got 40 viewers right now.
No, Tree streaming, don't even.
Yeah. And it is our show, but it's on my channel, but it is definitely our show. I am the producer, but Nazeris and I are partners.
Cue the I don't know if the Russian anthem's still a meme after what they've been doing, but where are we?
Here we
go.
That's fucking teamwork.
38 people. What the crap?
Oh, it didn't work when I did it. It would have worked for Blizzrad. Huh. Let's see. Record breaking again, end to the year, and targeted investments we have made have been focused upon our goals, setting us closer to achieving our vision and mission to deliver a gaming experience and universe of truly epic scale, fidelity, and quality for all our current and future players and community. So
Yeah,
that
true. Is there a
wraps up
schedule?
that wraps up the financial report. So let's switch screens so I don't have to look at this bright white screen and you guys don't either.